Welcome to Cory's Stories. Are you ready to meditate with Cory?
Hi friend, don't forget to subscribe, say that you like the video, and also press the bell so that you get notifications every time I make a new video. If you love Heidi, Cherry, and Vea, or Tucker and Leo stories, you can now get exclusive stories on my Patreon account. Go to the links below the video and you can join Heidi, Cherry, and Vea Club or the Tucker and Leo Club and get exclusive stories with your names in them. I love you all so much. Enjoy the story. Bye, friend.
Are you ready to meditate with Cory? Make sure that you're all comfortable and snug as a bug in your bed, that the light is just right in your room, so that you can relax your body and let go of your busy day. Jack was in the bathtub. He was painting once again with his magical paints. He was being very exact, very careful. He was painting a whale, a big whale, like as big as the whole side of the bathtub whale. He was using the different blues and greys, mixing them with white to make different tones. The whale had a really big mouth. And he also painted the blowhole. He painted water spurting out of the blowhole that went all the way up the wall. When he'd finished the whale, he stood back and looked at it. At first, nothing magical happened, to the point where he looked at his paints and thought, these are my magical paints, right? Because, as you know, when Jack paints on the side of the wall in the bathtub with his magical paints, magic happens. Whatever he seems to paint comes to life, just for a few moments normally. It rises up off the bathroom wall, and it's there in front of him, as if it's the real thing. And then normally, the paints just fall into the bathtub below and make the coolest colored water. But today he was staring at the paint, staring at his whale, and nothing was happening. He put his paintbrush down on the side of the tub and stepped closer to the whale. All of a sudden, he felt a gust of wind blowing around his head and his body. The gust of wind seemed to grab a hold of him and pull him close to the whale, to the point where it pulled him through the bathroom wall. He found himself sat on the top of his whale that he'd just painted. A real, live whale. He was sat on top of that whale. He felt the cool, soft, wet texture of the whale's flesh between his legs. It felt firm underneath his bum. He was sat directly behind the blowhole, and just as he noticed the blowhole that he just painted like 2 or 3 minutes ago, it blew out the biggest amount of water right there in front of him, and the sound was so loud he covered his ears. The water flew up about 20-30 feet in the air, and then it landed all over him like a shower. He wiped his face and started laughing. and the whale made a noise as if it was laughing with him. The whale telepathically told Jack to hold his breath and to hold on. Jack didn't know what to hold on to, but he reached down and put his fingers in the blowhole as if he was holding on to a steering wheel of some sort. And then the whale took him under into the ocean. At first, Jack closed his eyes because he didn't want the salt water to burn his eyes. He'd done that before on a vacation. He was snorkeling and water had got into his snorkel goggles and it burned his eyes and his eyes were red that whole evening. He didn't want that to happen again. So he just closed his eyes and held his breath. He felt like he was moving through the ocean really fast. He could feel like the pressure of the water moving around him as he was pulled through it. But then Jack noticed he'd been under the water for a long time, and he'd forgot that he was holding his breath. In fact, it was as if he didn't need to breathe. He was okay. There wasn't the urge to breathe. The whale told him that it was because they were now connected. He would breathe when the whale breathed. He would need air when the whale needed air, but that wasn't going to be for quite some time, as the whale could hold his breath a long, long time. Jack opened his eyes slowly. The water didn't sting. When he opened his eyes, he realized he was quite deep underneath the top of the ocean. Way down deep, in fact. There was a lot to see. There was all different types of fish, different colours, different sizes, swimming in and out of all the different pretty coloured corals. The whale slowed down, as if it felt like Jack needed to swim slower so that he could pay attention to all the beautiful things he could see down there. He saw a clownfish and it made him think of Nemo. He saw lots of different fish that looked like Dory. He saw an octopus. He saw eels. There was so much life down there. At one point he was thinking about all the different things he could paint on the side of his bath next time he had a bath. Then, after a few minutes, the whale speeded up again. He speeded up as if he was taking him somewhere. After a few minutes of them swimming really fast, Jack noticed lots of shadows, big dark shadows in front of them, and then as they got closer and closer, he realized they were other whales, a pod of whales, all swimming together. There was even a couple of baby whales there with them, swimming next to their mums. Jack's whale started to swim along with them, as if they were all heading in the same direction. Jack's whale started to go up to the surface of the water. It was time to take a breath. He breathed in big and deep. And as he breathed out, the whale breathed out the biggest squirt of ocean water up into the air. This time it went even higher. It felt like it must have been at least 50 feet tall. Once again, it landed all over him when it fell back down. This made Jack laugh once again. Jack's whale stayed up at the top of the ocean for quite some time, and Jack just sat on top of him as if he was riding on a horse. The sun was shining down. It was a really nice day. There was no land to be seen, just ocean as far as his eyes could see. At one point, he had a feeling of a little bit of a panic, loneliness. He felt scared, like he was in the middle of nowhere. He panicked a little bit about how he was going to get home. But then he felt the language of his whale, talking to him, telling him it would be okay. When it was time to go home, he would go home very easily. While they were swimming on the top of the ocean, Jack saw seagulls. At one point, a turtle swam by, and it was absolutely enormous. But it looked very small at the side of Jack's whale. Jack laid back on the top of his whale and looked up at the sky. Sunbathing and relaxing, just taking it all in. The ocean water was lapping around him every time the whale would move just a little bit. And at points he forgot where he was. It was like laying on a lilo in the middle of a pool, being on holiday all over again. He was very happy. The wind started to pick up, and he felt the cool breeze on his wet skin. And then it got really strong, and from nowhere a gust of wind hit him and blew him, and he found himself standing back in his bathtub, wet and cold. All the paints on the wall had dripped and run down. Part of it had fell into the bathtub. Part of the colours were still rolling down the wall. But his whale was no longer a whale. It was just a big grey, black, white mess. And the colour of the bathwater made him chuckle because it looked like he'd never had a bath before. It was all dirty and grey looking. Jack just stood there and said, "Wow." That's all he could say. Wow. He splashed the rest of the paint off the side of the bathtub, and he unplugged the bath, and the water disappeared down the drain. His wonderful, glorious whale disappeared down the drain. Until the next time he painted something, of course. The end.